Broadcasting from historic Mr. Small's Theater in Millvale, Pennsylvania, I'm Alan Saunders, filling in for Matt Geica. This is Geik's Got Game on the River's Edge. We're going to talk some sports here on Friday morning. It is the first day of December, and we've got plenty of topics to cover. And we'll catch up with Matt on the phone here in a little bit. He's out on the road covering the Penguins with DK Pittsburgh Sports. I believe he's in Buffalo. It's an interesting. We get him in a different city every time, so we'll get the highlights from Buffalo, I guess, from Matt. And I think we're going to talk all kinds of topics today. Probably going to touch on the City League basketball game. City game college basketball happening tonight. Pitt versus Duquesne at PPG Paints Arena. We'll probably talk some hot stove baseball. I'm sure when you put Matt and I together, hockey will come up at some point. And whatever else you've got a topic you want to discuss, hit me up on Twitter at @Saunders_PGH, and maybe we'll discuss it. So yeah, we're going to get Matt in here. One of the things that I want to talk with Matt about that I think is interesting is, the job of a beat reporter and being on the road is sometimes particularly glamorous, right? You're covering a professional sports team. You're in all these cities, and you're around famous athletes, and there's a lot to it. It's it's good stuff, but there are downsides to it, and there are things that happen as a part of it that are kind of funny. And Matt experienced one of those the other day in Toronto, as he got dressed down for his dress code, I guess, by Penguins GM Jim Rutherford in Toronto at the Hockey Hall of Fame. So we're gonna talk about that a little bit, and just part of the job, I guess, is looking the part. But I guess we'll discuss that a little bit. I think it's pretty funny what happened, and we'll let Matt, I guess, tell his side of the story. And then, I want to get into some baseball because we didn't talk about baseball much last week when I also guest hosted, as is becoming the norm. Brian, you're going to have to call it something other than Geik's Got Game if I'm here more than he is during hockey season.
Yeah, that's a good point. You're like the guy now.
I don't know. I'm like at
least for a couple weeks.
I'm at least risen to like Ed McMahon to his Johnny Carson, I think.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I'm okay with that. I do not have any large checks, though. So that seems like a disappointing. If I was going to be Ed McMahon, I would want to have big checks. Even if they didn't actually get any money, people would love to just get that big check.
That is kind of fun. I always wanted to get a big check. Yeah. That would always be something really great, especially if somebody just showed up to the studio and gave us a big check. Preferably with money.
Well, either way, though, getting or giving a big check is an exciting thing, right? Regardless of whether you actually get any money out of it or not, it's fun, right? It's giant.
It is fun. Yeah. It's very cool. It's very great for photos.
What's the Will Ferrell line from Semi-Pro? You just a giant check that says $10,000. So, yeah. We might have to call it something else, but last week we talked about a whole range of topics, and we didn't get to hot stove baseball, and that's something that's certainly at the top of the Twitter sphere right now, and discussing free agents and trades and things like that. So if Matt has some time, we'll get into that as well. And then the thing I really want to talk about is tonight's City game. And just sort of the state of college basketball in Pittsburgh. It's an interesting time for both of the major programs. Pitt and Duquesne are both rebuilding with Kevin Stallings and Keith Dambrot. And it sort of makes for an interesting game. It makes for a game that really nobody's trying to win. And I'll explain what I mean by that a little bit later. But it doesn't seem like there's a whole heck of a lot of buzz. I doubt it's going to be a particularly full building down at PPG Paints Arena tonight. And that saddens me because I like the City game. It's a lot of fun. And it's good stuff. But I do really see where both of these coaches are coming from, why they're building the way they are, and I think it's a good thing in the long run, but it's going to make for a weird feel tonight. And then the last thing I want to touch on is just the ridiculousness of college football right now. This Tennessee coaching search, which is one of 3 or 4 coaching searches that have just been absolutely ludicrous, and the role of boosters and fans in college football and how much say they should get in things is something that interests me a lot, and it's something that's come to the forefront in this Tennessee discussion. The Tennessee Athletic Director, John Currie, had an agreement to hire Ohio State defensive coordinator Greg Schiano, and that fell apart because essentially Twitter melted down. Tennessee fans that are now in the media, Tennessee alums that are now in the media, Tennessee legislators, business owners, they essentially rioted over the potential hiring of Greg Schiano. And I guess the rallying cry was that he was on the coaching staff at Penn State and was alleged to have known something about the Jerry Sandusky scandal before it came public. But really what happened was they rioted because they didn't like Greg Schiano as their head coach. They wanted a higher profile guy, and they just found that as a reason to do so. And that troubles me because we have gatekeepers for a reason. And when the gatekeepers lose their ability to be just that, it sends these institutions, which are by and large public institutions, down in paths into dangerous places. And I just had a conversation with a Pitt fan this morning, about why doesn't Pitt try harder to have an on-campus football stadium, and their thought was, they have to try. It doesn't matter if they're successful or not. They have to try. They have to spend the money to have a plan and then fundraise for that plan and do the legwork. And then if it doesn't work, they could say, well, we tried and it didn't work. And it's easy for a fan to say that and think that, but then if you look at an administrator, how can you be financially responsible for that money that you just put out there for a plan that doesn't have any hope? And that's the reason that there are these gatekeepers in all sports, but college sports specifically, because the funding is so derived from the fans, right? Boosters pay the coaches' salaries, they pay for the travel of the teams, they pay for the facilities. So, you give that much money to a program for, a new gym or a locker room or whatever you're donating money for, the expectation is you're going to have some sort of say in the process. And that's fine on a limited scale. I don't think anybody at Oklahoma State is complaining about T. Boone Pickens having a little bit to say about what the Oklahoma State Athletic Department does, given the amount of money that he donates. But when it turns from boosterism to an angry mob, I think that's where we lose something in translation, because T. Boone Pickens, does he have the best interest of Oklahoma State University and the taxpayers of Oklahoma at heart when he decides the things that he's allowed to decide when it comes to the Oklahoma State Athletics program? I don't know. But he by himself, he's put up his own money. So if he does damage, he's done damage to his own cause as well as other people's. When you have people like Clay Travis, who is a commentator for Fox Sports and a Tennessee fan, he doesn't have any skin in this. Tennessee legislators at the federal level, they don't have anything invested in this. Business owners in the town, those are people that institutions should not be giving control over their processes to. And I understand part of being an athletic director is knowing your fan base and knowing the market in your city for the thing that you want to sell. If you want people to come to your football stadium, then you're going to have a football team that excites people. That's part of the job. But part of the job is also, how many coaching stories, some of our favorite stories about coaches are guys that somebody saw something in him that nobody else saw. And then that stroke of genius from this guy turned this program around and led to a great future. But if when, for example, the Pittsburgh media and Pitt fans in general were not particularly thrilled with the idea of hiring Jamie Dixon after Ben Howland left Pitt to go to UCLA. It was seen as a weak hire. People didn't like it. They thought the players would be, running things because Dixon had been, this young player-friendly assistant, and he wouldn't be able to discipline. And he didn't have any head coaching experience at that high of a level. He had never recruited at that high of a level. There was no proof that he could get it done. And, Pitt had just put a lot of money into an on-campus basketball facility, and there was an expectation that they were going to invest in the team and do what it took to get the team to the next level. And to a lot of people, hiring Jamie Dixon at that time didn't look like it was doing those things. It didn't look like it was making an appropriate hire for the investment that they'd made. It didn't look like it was doing what it was going to take to get the team to the next level. Jamie Dixon turned out to be the best coach in the history of Pitt basketball by a long shot, and it's not even close. And nobody would have known that before he was hired. But, the Pitt athletic department, they saw something in him. Maybe they got lucky. I don't know. But they made that move of their own volition. It was slightly unpopular, and it turned out to be the right one. I don't know I think Greg Schiano is a heck of a football coach. Is he there, Jamie Dixon? I don't know. You look at what he did at Rutgers. Rutgers has been bad for over 100 years, and Greg Schiano won there when literally nobody else has ever won there, and that's impressive. And I think he can be a really good head coach. I don't know if it had been a great success at Tennessee or not. But the fact that he's not getting a chance, not because the athletic director didn't think he deserved a chance, not because the president of the university didn't think he deserved a chance, not because he doesn't have the proper credentials. I mean, he's been a head coach. He was a head coach at Rutgers. He was a head coach at Tampa Bay in the NFL. He's the defensive coordinator of a top 10 defense at Ohio State, who's won national championships. He has all the credentials. There's no reason why he shouldn't be given an opportunity to show what he can do, other than just the angry mob didn't like him, they wanted a bigger name, and I just, if you run a business that way, that's crazy. You have to be able to identify talent on your own and not be subject to the every will and desire of the base fan. And the way that went down, it was really troubling to me. I think it's a bad sign for college athletics in general because, as that's happening, there's some people in the know, myself included, that are essentially laughing and saying, what are they doing? Like, what coach in his right mind is going to take this job after you just run a legitimate candidate off for no good reason? And that's exactly what happened. Tennessee ran through 7 or 8 other options very quickly without making a hire. I'm seeing on Twitter right now that the Washington State coach Mike Leach has also turned down Tennessee, and Mike Leach is as crazy as there comes. So when it says who would be crazy enough to take that job, well, you could check his box probably. He won't go there either. You've poisoned the well because the coaches see what's happened there. And how could they sign up to lead that program, sign up for that athletic director to be their boss when they know he doesn't really have control of what's going on? How could John Curry promise a coach something and say, well, yes, we're going to give you this, and absolutely, no matter what, we're going to deliver on that? He couldn't deliver on the last guy I tried to hire. And so it poisoned the job. And as it was happening, people on Twitter that were in the know were saying, oh, my God, look at how stupid Tennessee is. Whether Schiano was the right hire or not, you just can't do this to people. This is going to bite them in the butt. And there was half the people that were saying, yeah, look, go Tennessee. You tell them, don't take that crap. I wish my insert team here had done the same thing when we hired insert coach here that I don't like. And every fan base thinks that their team deserves to win, that they have some sort of special right to be better than everybody else, and that's the natural order of things. And it's just these people that are screwing it up that are keeping that from happening, and it's delusional. But that's why we have these gatekeepers, right? That's why we have athletic directors. What's the point of having an athletic director if the fans are going to approve any hire? You may as well just save $600,000 on your athletic director salary and let the boosters and the student section pick your head coach. That's essentially what Tennessee did, and it's not something I've seen a lot of before, but it really troubles me that so many people seemed so on board with that move from the Tennessee fan base, because it's not a good thing. That's how you end up making really, really bad decisions, spending a lot of money unwisely, and Tennessee is going to end up paying Greg Schiano something. I don't know what, but I mean, they're going to end up paying him real money that doesn't just come out of boosters' pockets, real money that comes out of the pockets of students and of Tennessee taxpayers. For what? Because they thought they were going to get John Gruden instead. And man, it's troubling and disappointing to me. And I think if I'm an athletic director right now, I have to be seriously concerned the next time I have to make a big hire, because I don't see this as something that's going to go away. With social media the way it is now, everyone's voice is the same, right? You know, you have for every Clay Travis, there were 2 or 3 people saying, no, don't do this, it's insane. But there are no gatekeepers in that world, and people latch on to the message that they want to hear. They amplify it, and that's how we ended up where we are. Tennessee still doesn't have a head coach 9 attempts later, and I'm sure they'll eventually find someone. But man, it's college athletics is a fairy tale land of make believe when it comes to the backroom stuff that the fans don't know about and they don't want to know about, because it sort of destroys their. We talked last week about suspension of belief, right? Well, if my coach is just as dirty and my athletic department is just as crooked and skeevy and money pinching, and they're all the same. Your school, your team is not special, and it is not better or more moral than any of the other ones, probably. And people don't want to believe that, but it's true. And you can't make business decisions with the fan belief, right? If the fan belief that we can get John Gruden, I know we can, or Pitt could build an on-campus stadium if they just tried harder. That fan belief is wonderful as a fan. It's wonderful. That's what propels athletics. We're talking on the 10th anniversary of Pitt beating West Virginia 13-9 and ruining their undefeated season as a 4-win Pitt team down in Morgantown. Yeah, the fans that said, I knew they could do it, that had to be an unbelievable feeling. But any rational person would say, it's not very likely to happen. If Pitt goes down there and plays 100 times, they're probably going to lose 95. And so it's wonderful for the fans to say, yes, I believe in my team can win. If they go down there and they try hard enough and they play their best, we've got it. But if you run your business betting on the 5% instead of the 95%, you're going to be bankrupt very, very quickly. And college athletics, it's a business. They have a budget. They're given money. They raise money. They have to spend it wisely. And, there's a reason the athletic directors don't do everything the fans want, and it's because everything the fans want isn't always a good idea. And, this is a problem that I don't see getting better anytime soon. I think we're going to see more scenarios like Tennessee, and I think we're going to see more and more the role of boosters, the role of fans becoming outsized as these processes, which used to happen, 30 years ago, Tennessee hired a football coach because the athletic director knew this guy, who knew that guy, who grew up with this guy, who recommended this guy, and that's the way it happened. And there was no process that played out in public. Brett McMurphy wasn't tweeting that this guy was interested in the job and that they interviewed this guy. And no, just one day the athletic director walked out with Johnny Majors and they said, hey, this guy that used to coach at Pitt, he's our coach now. Here he is. And that was the entire process. But now that fans and boosters can see the entire process play out, there's so many more opportunities for what happened at Tennessee to happen. And I think it will. And I think it's a really scary thing for athletic departments, for athletic directors. And to be honest, I think it's a bad thing in general for fans of the sport, because you're going to see schools and teams do things that they probably shouldn't be doing, waste money that they shouldn't be wasting, and it's going to make it tough. It's going to affect the competitive landscape. I really do believe. All right, that was a long one. Sorry for that. First period, though, I think we can put in the books, and then we're going to get Matt on the phone from Buffalo. He's texting me right now. Ready whenever. Perfect. All right, we're going to step aside for a minute, and then we'll be back on the River's Edge. I'm Alan Saunders. This is Gike's Got Game.
Hey, River's Edge listeners. Alex here from the Mike Sasson Show, and boy, have I got to tell you about Salon 22, a small local business located right here in Millville. I got my hair colored there about 2 weeks ago, and I still can't stop staring at myself. They use this awesome new technique called color melting to make me look like a mermaid. But don't worry, if mermaid hair isn't your thing, they'll meet all your hair goals, with things like balayage, rose gold, unicorn hair, ombre, as well as monochromatic color, which is your standard basic coloring. Seriously, they do it all, and they do it good. Check Salon 22 out on Facebook and mention this ad when you make your appointment to receive a free color lock service to help preserve your color. It's a $20 value for free. I'm not kidding. Book your appointment now by calling 412-822-7222. That's 412-822-7222.
Welcome back to Gike's Got Game on the River's Edge. I'm Alan Saunders filling in for Matt Geica. We're talking sports for another 40 minutes or so here, and we've got Matt on the phone. Matt, I believe, is in Buffalo. It's hard to keep track of him. I need like they have that flight tracker app that we were just talking college coaching searches. We need like a Matt tracker app that we can put up on the green screen here, like whatever city that you're in, as we bring you in on the phone.
You do have his beautiful picture on the green screen.
We do, and it's a good picture. But I think Matt on the phone from Buffalo, New York, very very Larry King Live-esque.
I'm just a traveling man these days, Alan, and thanks again for filling in for me. I really appreciate it. From Buffalo last week Boston last week to Buffalo this week. I'm having a hard time keeping track of myself, so maybe I do need that flight tracker app. Although I'm not flying this time. This was all by wheel, my own driving, getting me up here and hopefully back to Pittsburgh by Saturday afternoon.
And then you were in Toronto in the interim, right?
Yeah, that was a fun little excursion to go up there to the Hockey Hall of Fame. I didn't realize it was a thing that championship teams donated a ring to the Hall of Fame, but it's been going on for about 12 years, and they have a few of them sporadically from over the history of the game. There was a ring from 1893, which looked like a pinky ring compared to some of the ones on display here. Badger Bob's ring from 1991 was also in there, so that was really cool to see. And to get a VIP tour of the goalie mask exhibit, courtesy of Jim Rutherford, who had a couple of his artifacts on display, well, that just put the cherry on top. So if you're a hockey nerd, you cover his beats, you get some treats every once in a while.
Well, I wanted to talk about that, actually. But what I wanted to talk about was you getting chirped about your wardrobe.
Well, I had a 5-hour drive, and I wasn't about to go to the hotel first because Toronto traffic is maybe as bad as any I've experienced outside of Los Angeles on this continent. So I wore slacks, and I guess you call it business casual, not exactly a suit. And I have been wearing some suits to Penguins games recently, and apparently Jim Rutherford noticed that. He decided to chirp me on that, to get on me and say that I wear suits to games, that I come to the Hockey Hall for this ceremony, and I can't put a jacket on at least. So we all had our fun, but, I just got to thinking after that, how many major sports executives would even show an ounce of humanity in a media scrum like that? That's just who Jim Rutherford is. He's old school, and at the same time, he doesn't scrimp on the candor on the record either. So it was the usual type of friendly, folksy encounter with Uncle Jim.
Well, I did think, to me, in that it sort of enlightened a bit of the meme where it's like what people think I do and what I actually do, and as a sports writer, I think there's a lot of 8-minute clips of me looking fairly presentable on video somewhere, or sounding very professional on the radio or talking in an interview. And like the rest of the time, I'm like wearing sweatpants, driving 5 hours in my Volkswagen covered in Cheetos and eating Wendy's. and they're like people just sort of gloss over, right? Like they don't see that part. So I must just people like you and we just wear suits everywhere we go, right? Just we're to the nines all the time. But that's so far from reality that it's actually kind of comical, especially when you're on like some big road swing like that, where you were in one city, then you're in another city 3 days later, then you're in a different. You don't know what day it is. You don't know which Marriott you woke up in. How you look is like the last thing on your mind. And to me, I thought it was pretty funny because I think that's something that people don't really see. They don't really think about.
Well, it's more of a challenge now, as you alluded to, because no one is just a writer. No one is just a broadcaster. We all do a variety of things. And so you're right. You have to look at least somewhat presentable. You have to care about your appearance. I'm not sure that was the case. I know that wasn't the case 15 or 20 years ago if you were a beat reporter for a newspaper, for example, which I suppose my position at DK is the evolution of that. And don't get me wrong. I like doing all the multimedia things. I love radio. I love video. And in addition to the long-form writing stuff. But at the same time, there are some drawbacks to that. There's more that you have to bring along, more you have to prepare. And, the whole world's a stage. Who was that? Shakespeare said that, and I think that definitely applies to our profession right now.
Yeah, but I thought that was an interesting, peek behind the curtain a little bit, if you will, about a day in the life of a beat writer on the road. It's certainly not as glamorous as it may seem to those on the outside.
No, not at all. Not to say that it's not a heck of a lot of fun, but you underestimate, I believe, if you're on the outside, the rigors of travel. We are not traveling with the team. That's a misconception that happens a lot if we're talking about disconnects between the people who consume the media and the people who work in the media. I don't work for the Penguins, so I got to figure out my own travel. I have to figure out my own hotel. I fly commercial like all the rest of everybody else, or most of everybody else. And my wife helps me out with that. She's my unofficial travel agent, which gives me more time to work on the stuff that I like to do. So I give her credit for that. She enjoys it. And I'm very fortunate to have her on board with this team scenario, if you will. But for the players themselves, yeah, it's challenging physically, and flying all over the country isn't easy. Recovery, time changes, not to mention the fact they're playing an extremely strenuous game for a living, 82 times over the course of 6 months, plus more in preseason and postseason. But they do have all the amenities of high-class travel. And as for us who are following the team independently, it's just about maintaining energy, taking care of yourself, managing time, and also finding some time to just disconnect, too. That's also that's a challenge. But when you're on the road, you can find some diversions and some sightseeing. I love doing that sort of thing, just checking out all the flavor of cities and regions, flavor literally in many cases, when I'm looking for a meal.
Do you have any diversions planned for Buffalo? What's the draw there?
Believe it or not, I'm going to try to find a way to play golf today. I have to keep my streak alive. I've played every month for the past 24 or so. So I'm thinking later in December might get more dicey, and it's actually a decent day up there. So I'm looking for a course I can squeeze 9 holes in between the morning skate, which I'm at right now at KeyBank Center, and tonight's game against the Sabres at 7 o'clock. But you know what? I was really impressed by Buffalo when I was up here a couple of months ago for the rookie tournament the Penguins took part in. There is quite a renaissance going on downtown near the lakefront here, and I was impressed by the amount of breweries and hip places, hip restaurants and gastropubs, that kind of thing popping up. It reminded me a lot of some areas of Pittsburgh, in fact, like your Lawrencevilles or your Shady Side, if you want to go back 5 or 10 years when that really started to go. Buffalo, I would say, underrated in the nightlife / food and drink area.
Yeah, and that area there right by the hockey rink, they call Canal Side, is like a big public park. And in the winter, now they have outdoor skating on the canal there and all kinds of other, I guess it's like a little outdoor winter garden area that's public. And there's, like you said, the breweries, and there's that's where when I go up for Robert Morris, that's where Canisius plays their home games right there at the Harbor Center. And that's a beautiful facility too. Yeah, I love Buffalo. It's one of my favorite trips because it's close and it's different and it's interesting. Most of the cities that are like 4 hours away are kind of meh in my book, but Buffalo's a good one. I'm a fan.
It has quite a bit of character. It has that Rust Belt feel. So it actually reminds me of Pittsburgh maybe 10 or 15 years ago, as well as I can remember it. I'm only 32, so it's not like I go back to the 70s or 60s in Pittsburgh. But it has much of the factories are still around, maybe some of them dormant, some of them still active. And, well, they have to make do in the wintertime up here because it gets blustery, it gets snowy. You're right here on the lake. So, I've lived in Michigan in the past, in Grand Rapids, very similar size city, similar type of a climate. And you get that camaraderie. You just bunker in during the winter, and you have to embrace it once it arrives. And it's about to arrive up here, even though they really haven't had any snow, which might be an upset at this point of it. And maybe the best thing for me, I like these manageable size cities. Toronto is spectacular. It's amazing, but to get anywhere, it takes a while. Once you get downtown, it's fine, and you're on foot. But if you're driving like I did, boy, are you going to be waiting in traffic quite a bit, no matter the time of day. In Buffalo, I cruised through here in rush hour yesterday, and it's not like you feel you're wasting all this time in transit to go from place to place.
Yeah, I was in Blacksburg, Virginia 2 weeks ago, and then I was in Brooklyn last week. that doesn't show off the difference. Traffic back from Brooklyn. I was like a 3:30 tip off, so coming back through Manhattan at rush hour is one of the worst things you can attempt to do. But I wanted to talk hockey. Buffalo's a great hockey city as well. That's one of the things I like about it. But I want to talk about baseball because the hot stove season is going on, and I know you're very interested in that. And even though you cover hockey, I'm sure you're going to be covering some baseball this summer as well. And I just wanted to talk about the drama unfolding, I guess, with Ohtani and Andrew McCutchen and what's going to happen with him, and get your takes on where the Pirates stand as we enter December, which is traditionally when things kind of start to heat up here.
Well, first of all, I'm surprised at the level of passion that Neil Huntington expressed on the 93.7 Fan the other day when he was talking about Shohei Ohtani, and he said the Pirates want to do everything in their power to bring him to Pittsburgh. I didn't think we'd hear any official comment from Huntington on that, and if we did, it would be some sort of a lukewarm statement. But when you think about it, with where the Pirates are, I believe they have the third most money to spend on international free agent signings, and Ohtani's under the age, I believe 25, so there is that cap on how much that he can make in his first Major League Baseball contract. So this would be the time, theoretically, to strike and go after Ohtani, who is vying to become the first real two-way player in baseball since, I don't know, Babe Ruth. You have to go way back in the day to find someone who could do that. It remains to be seen if the bat plays at the major league level. I think the consensus is that his stuff off the pitcher's mound will be good, and he'll be an above-average pitcher once he comes over. We'll see about the offense, but he's an exciting player. He could be a difference maker. He's torn it up over in Japan. The problem is that I'm thinking, from what I'm reading, from reports, from what Ohtani said himself, he wants to market himself. He wants to become the international face of baseball in a lot of ways. And Pittsburgh's going to be a tough market to do that. It might be easier now than it was 10, 15, 20 years ago because media has changed. It's so segmented and balkanized. So you don't have to be in New York or Los Angeles or one of these big markets, Chicago, to make a cultural impact. You can pretty much play anywhere, I think, these days. But there will still be the challenge of transitioning to a new culture. And in Pittsburgh, we don't have much Asian culture. It would be a challenge, even though the Pirates did successfully help, I think, Jung Ho Gung get acclimated here. So they have that going for them, different country in Korea to Japan. But at least they have that little bit of experience to play off of. But what a difference maker he would be for a reasonable price. That's the thing. That's the most important thing for the Pirates.
Yeah, I think I've seen a lot of people say, "Oh, the Pirates would be too cheap to get a player like that." Well, he's not going to cost that much money. He's going to cost less than Jordy Mercer is going to cost as arbitration contracts come out today. But to me, the thing is what you said about he wants to be a star. He wants to be a player that's recognized internationally, and I don't want to say that you can't do that in Pittsburgh, but it's certainly not the best place to do that. And, he wants to max.
Yeah, it's like like I was saying, it's going to be a challenge to sell him on Pittsburgh, and they're not exactly coming off of a very hardening season on the major league level. Much of their results weren't encouraging, even though there are some younger players who you think might be getting a little bit better, including in that pitching staff, most definitely. And we've talked about fits on the Pirates and who they might or where they might try to upgrade this offseason. Someone like Ohtani, you just throw that out. You bring him in and you go for it. I'm curious about your perspective on hearing that the Giants are interested in trading for Andrew McCutchen. It's been my stance that the Pirates aren't going to get enough value in any kind of trade to make up for both the loss on the field of McCutchen and off the field, too. It would be a double whammy to lose him, to give him up for prospects or even major league players because of what McCutchen's meant to this organization. So I've gotten past the point where I think the Pirates should trade him, at least until the trade deadline. Then maybe if you're out of it, you see what you can get.
Yeah, I thought there was a time last offseason where you looked at the starting rotation and you looked as just big question marks. And then you looked at the outfield depth and you could see a trade I could see trades last offseason that I thought Neil Huntington could sell, right? We have depth in the outfield with guys like Frazier and Osuna, who are essentially at the major league level. And then there are guys and then you have, Meadows coming. And look at these pitchers, and right now, our starting five has two rookies and a second-year guy who didn't do very well. So I thought then he could have sold a trade for, somebody like who was one of the pitchers that Gio Gonzalez, right, was one of the pitchers the Nats were talking about trading. You could sell a trade like that because, oh man, just our rotation is just, it's young, it's inexperienced. Here's a guy, he's going to get 200 innings for us. We have depth in the outfield we could replace McCutchen with. But what happened in 2017 was that all those young pitchers panned out, and the Pirates added more question marks than they had in the outfield. Gregory Polanco didn't have a great year. Starling Marte got suspended and didn't look great when he came back. and Meadows didn't have a fantastic year in AAA. So now when you look at the Pirates, I think an Andrew McCutchen trade is really hard to sell. They need him to play well in center field right now.
Yeah, it's really weird how much things have changed in one offseason, and you just laid out all those reasons why. But most pertinently for me is McCutchen last year had 2 years left on his contract, and you could imagine a team saying, all right, he showed a little bit at the end of 2016. We can get him back to at least close to where he was at his peak. And credit to McCutchen and the coaching staff, perhaps, if they helped out too. But McCutchen recouped a lot of that value this year. So in that way, I think he's more of a sure bet to be productive in 2018 as compared to where we were at this point last year. But when you're just talking about 1 year left on a contract, I don't know who makes that deal. And with how smart general managers are becoming in modern baseball, it's going to be tougher to find someone to pick up a guy for 1 year and really give up something that would help you both in 2018 and beyond. So I don't see it as being a real thing, but apparently, according to reports, the Giants are pushing pretty hard. They're trying to find someone to get them kick-started because they had a back-to-back awful years, both in 16 and 17.
And, the other thing is, his contract ends at the end of the season, but I think it's pretty reasonable that he would have the kind of year that the Pirates would be able to, offer him a contract and end up with a first-round pick out of it at the end of it. And so
that's something else to
it's not
as well.
It's not if they keep him, they lose no matter what. It's not like he walks scot-free. If they can offer him a contract, and if he performs at the same level he did in 2017 and 2018, then that he'll be worth that kind of a contract, the minimum contract required to get compensation. And then I think that really puts them in a pretty good spot. I mean, as a first-round pick can help the team, not for a couple of years, but, I mean, that's pretty significant value for a player that at that point will be, how old, like 34, 30, 33. So, I mean, that's not nothing. and the ability to trade him at the trade deadline, I'm with you. I have thought the other thing to me is that all the moves that Neil Huntington made down the stretch in 2017 looked like the moves that a team that was trying to contend in 2018 would make. Right? They get Sean Rodriguez. There's no reason to get Sean Rodriguez. He wasn't helping them win. He wasn't helping them, run down the Cubs in the division. He was signed for another year. They claim George Contos on waivers, and they let Juan Nicasio go for free. Well, Juan Nicasio might be the better pitcher, but George Contos has another year on his contract, and so he's back for 2018. It just seemed like everything they did leading up to this looked like a team that intended on trying their hardest to compete in 2018, and I don't see a way they can do that without having Andrew McCutchen in the lineup.
You're spot on with that. This is the last run for these guys. If this doesn't work in 2018 with McCutchen, but also with Garrett Cole, with Gregory Polanco, with Starling Marte, some of those question marks you brought up. Heck, Jordy Mercer's been part of that team, part of that core,
Nova,
that starting lineup for several years now. If they don't win this year, then it's time to reconsider and think about where this organization is going. But they owe it to themselves, and they owe it to their fans, too, to give this core of talent one last run, especially from the position player standpoint. Starting pitching, they look pretty solid for a few years here, at least around league average, and there's no guarantee in pitching. Injuries can happen, attrition, league can punch back against guys who maybe had success the first time around. But overall, this is a position player group that should be at its peak and should be at its top production level. So when you talk about building a team and setting up arcs of competitiveness or windows, or whatever you want to say, the Pirates have often talked about trying to keep that window open for as long as possible. 2018 does look like a line of demarcation at the end of the year at least. And if they're out of it at the deadline, then maybe you can start restructuring for 2019, 20, and beyond. But I don't see any reason for the Pirates to quote-unquote blow it up right now and punt on 2018, or at least make it a rebuilding year. They've had back-to-back seasons where they found out a lot about their pitching staff, and now it's time for the guys in the lineup to come through. And if not, then you think about it again and you make changes.
Okay, so I think we agree that they're probably not going to get Ohtani, and neither of us seem to think that they're going to trade Andrew McCutchen. So what are they going to do, and can they sell keeping essentially the same team they had together last year as enough to me, I think that's them going for it in 2018. But will fans and will the generally Pirates negative media in this town buy that? Or will they just get blasted for trotting the same lineup out there that finished X number of games out in 2017?
Well, they really could use an influx of power. We know that. They know that. Everyone in baseball knows that. But I don't know where it comes from. And the one move that's on the table for me is a Josh Harrison trade. Do you think he's built up enough value where he could get you something who could help you, whether it be in the pitching category or on offense? I don't know, but it's worth a shot. I would imagine that Huntington has thrown out some feelers to see who might be interested in picking up a guy who has a couple of years left on his contract. And when he's at his best, he's a pretty good spark plug and a catalyst. When he's at his worst, he's an on-base percentage hole in your lineup and runs into outs and maybe lets his aggression get the better of him. He's the piece, though, that I think right now has that convergence of a couple of years left of control and at a reasonable price, and also considered to be a decent player at the major league level and who had a good or at least a passable 2017. Outside of that, we know they're not going to spend on free agents. Could they go and get someone in kind of like a buy low situation? Yeah, they could and see where he goes. But it's going to be a negative response to answer your question, the second part of that question too, because of where last year's team finished. And they're probably going to trot out a similar lineup and hope that internal improvements happen. I think it's reasonable for Polanco and Marte to expect them to be better. Will it be enough? I don't know. I still think they have to be more of a pitching and defense type outfit if they want to compete next year.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it's reasonable to expect that they'll be better, but I don't expect a reasonable reaction to that that strategy. We've got to take another break. Are you good to stick around on the other side, or you got to run?
Actually, I got to go. I got to get down to the media room, pick up some packets, and then Penn's morning skate starts in a little bit. So sorry to leave you, but thanks again for filling in. I really appreciate it, and fun to call in from the road.
There you go. That's Matt Geica from Buffalo. We're going to step aside for a minute. I'm Alan Saunders, filling in at Geica's Got Game on the River's Edge, Pittsburgh.
Hi, I'm Rob Spear, host of Damn Near Killed Him, an interview show where anything goes.
Once they gave it to me, you could have stuck a telephone pole up my ass.
I was about to be, kicked out of the country.
That's where they send the worst of the worst.
In a psych ward, normal things seem so weird in there.
Who was making $5,000 a month doing gay audiobooks?
Hear some stories from people who have been to the Edge and back. Thursday morning at 9 a.m. on riversedgepgh.com or download on iTunes.
I mean, that's some pretty cool shit.
Welcome back to the River's Edge on Geica's Got Game. I'm Alan Saunders, filling in for Matt Geica. And alongside me is Brian Crawford, producer
Hello.
extraordinaire. Brian, you've got a...
You're stealing one of Mike Sassen's lines.
Producer extraordinaire?
Yeah.
Oh, well, great minds, I guess.
I guess so.
You've got a message for us here about the upcoming...
do.
Was it a Yuletide?
The Yuletide Tour, Millville's Yuletide Tour. It is tomorrow. It's going on all day. Santa's going to light the Christmas tree. They have the blue line that's going through Millville, the public art project. They are going to reveal the final project, and it's all going to come together. But most important of all, and maybe the most exciting thing, is tomorrow at 10 a.m. at Tazadora, I, Brian Crawford, Pittsburgh's moral compass, your voice of reason among three rivers of chaos, will be performing my show live at the coffee house, so you can come down and have a glass of coffee, and you can buy me a glass of coffee too. Can you imagine, Alan, the opportunity that people here in this town and people outside of the town that want to travel in have? They have the opportunity to buy me a glass of coffee at Tazadora tomorrow. I mean, you can't ask.
It's a big opportunity that doesn't come up all that often.
No, it doesn't. I mean, you can't ask for more. Someone like me, a big shot, coming down to meet with the people and drink coffee. And we're going to talk with Anne, who is the artist who put together, Torrentino, who put together this public art project. She'll be calling in, and we have some other great stuff. Sheena Carroll, who's a great poet, and also an employee of the Millville Library. She will be there as well. So it's going to be a great day for the community. It all starts with the River's Edge, and it ends probably with the bars, people going to the bars. That's where it'll end for me.
That's when it ends. Also, I noticed on the marquee coming up here that next Saturday, the 9th, playing at Mr. Small's Theater here in this very building, Pigeons playing ping pong.
Really?
Marquee. Now,
that's fantastic, the name.
I need to know, though, is that the name of the band, or is it like a circus thing where it's actually pigeons in here playing ping pong? And which one would you rather attend?
Both. I would like to see a band I would like to see pigeons playing ping pong to a band, and maybe the band could play ping pong somehow incorporated, like use a ping pong paddle or something incorporated in their music. I feel like that would be pretty fantastic.
Like a ping pong paddle shaped guitar.
That would be cool. But I do have a serious question for you since you brought up pigeons. What do you think is more evil, pigeons or geese?
Ooh, see, I think pigeons are less desirable, but geese are more evil.
I think that's...
Geese are extremely evil. But I'm okay with a little bit of evil. But I just don't want the pigeons. The pigeons are just a nuisance.
See, I thought I was with you, but then as my mind processed that statement, I think of the Great Lawn on the north side there, and how it's just completely covered in geese feces, and you can't even walk across the gas. You can't even walk across the grass. So I feel like they're somewhat of a nuisance as well.
They are, but no. I don't know. I still dislike the pigeons.
Fair enough.
Regardless, this is a sports show, and
the Great Lawn is near in between two stadiums.
That's right there in the Riverfront Park, in between PNC Park and Heinz Field. But I'm going to talk about college basketball, and college basketball specifically. It's happening indoors at PPG Paints Arena tonight. Pitt is playing Duquesne in I believe it's the 86th city game. Pitt had won 15 in a row until Duquesne won last year. And to be honest, this game completely doesn't matter. And not only doesn't it matter, is neither team is really trying to win. And let me explain that sentence. I'm sure if you ask the players, they're trying their hardest out there, given that they're all, I'm sure you'll get some cliches about, playing hard for 40 minutes and all that. But organizationally, both of these teams are in such deep rebuilds that the wins and losses don't matter to them right now. I mean, Pitt is going to win 8 games, maybe 10, 12 would be a fantastic season. Duquesne, they have a little bit of a weaker schedule. They might win 12. But neither is going to a postseason tournament. Neither is going to make any noise in their conference tournament. Neither is going to win very many conference games. They're probably not going to win any conference road games. It's a rebuild. And one of the things that I really actually respect and admire about both Kevin Stallings and Keith Dambrot is that they have embraced the idea of a rebuild. They're in professional sports in the last 15 years, it has become sort of acceptable to embrace the idea of a rebuild. When the Penguins tanked for Mario Lemieux in 1983, it was like state secret that they were doing it, and guys were taking things to their grave that the Penguins weren't trying their hardest to win those games. Now you've seen the Philadelphia 76ers, and before that, some other NBA teams essentially say, yes, we were trying really hard to get that number 1 draft pick and not so much anything else. In college sports, there is no number 1 draft pick. There's no Mario Lemieux coming for being bad. In fact, it's generally worse off in the recruiting field to have a bad record than it is to have a good record. But when you come into a job and come into a program with nothing to work with, that's the only way forward. The only way to build a program is to bring in freshmen, start from the ground up, lay a foundation, and you know what? You're going to be bad. You're going to be bad for a year or two. It's going to be bad. I talked to Jay Vidovich, who is the Pitt men's soccer coach. He just had his second season, and he had a very successful one. They won some big games. They were just 1 win away from making the NCAA tournament for the first time in a long time, and they had a really good year. But before his first season, I talked to him, and he was as forthright as you can be. He said, really all we can accomplish this year is establish hard work, establish a program culture, establish the fundamentals of the things that we're trying to do. And that's really all we can do. And then next year, maybe we can try to win some games. Well, both Pitt and Duquesne basketball are in that place right now. All they can do this year is establish culture, establish fundamentals like hard work, like discipline, and that's all they can do. They are building a foundation from the bottom. And as a result, both coaches, and I've covered both teams, have taken a pretty holistic approach to that. Kevin Stallings has not played a minute of any other defense other than man-to-man. And neither is Keith Dambrot. And it's not because that's the best way to play the opponents that they've had on their schedule. In fact, there's sometimes when that was the worst way to play one of the opponents Pitt had on their schedule. Keith Dambrot finished the game against Cornell on Monday with 6 players that he could play. But he was still playing man-to-man, even though it requires far more physical exertion than his own does, because, and he said it after the game, when we get good, I want to play man-to-man. So these guys have to play man-to-man. When Pitt was losing a game earlier this year to, I think it was UC Santa Barbara, and they were just chucking up 3 after 3 after 3, Pitt didn't change into a zone. Pitt didn't extend the defense. Pitt didn't go to a full court press to disrupt the timing of the offense. They stuck in their defense and said, "This is what they're doing. You can defend that in our defense. We're going to learn how to do it. You guys aren't doing it. We're going to learn how to do it. We're not going to change." And Kevin Stallings used the words bail. I'm not going to bail them out. I'm not going to bail them out. I'm not going to make a change to make it easier for them to defend this team. They're going to defend this team as difficult as it's going to be. They're going to defend it in our defense because that's the defense they need to learn. And it doesn't matter if Pitt loses some games against teams they should beat. Pitt lost to Navy. Pitt lost to Montana. Duquesne lost to Robert Morris. Duquesne lost to Cornell. It doesn't matter because they weren't going anywhere this year either. Anywhere. Neither team was. So it doesn't matter if they lose these games. And it doesn't matter if they lose to one another. What matters is building those building blocks, the foundation for success in hard work, in fundamentals, discipline, defense, rebounding, effort, teamwork. Those are the things that matter. And so That's what a win is for Pitt, and that's what a win is for Duquesne. The final score is almost doesn't matter, and then you have no history here, right? I mean, Pitt only has 2 players that have played in this game before. Duquesne only has, I don't know, 5 of them. One's hurt, so maybe 4. Keith Dambrot is not obviously familiar with the rivalry between Duquesne and Pitt, and Kevin Stallings is only just familiar with it, having played last year. The coaching staffs underneath them are not stacked full of former alums and players that played in this game, and the history of it's on hiatus. I expect Pitt and Duquesne to continue to play, but if the rivalry is going to remain one, these coaches and these teams are going to have to rekindle it at some point. But I don't think this is the year. If you're headed down to PPG Paints Arena, it's not going to be, I don't believe, an intense rivalry game. It's going to be 2 teams that are out there trying very hard to work on the things that they've been working on all season, to master their own craft. And at the end of the game, there will be a final score, and there will be a winner, and there will be a loser, and it will not necessarily be the first thing on anyone's mind. That being said, I think Pitt should win going away pretty handily. But we'll see. There's a reason they play it. And like I said, but either way, it just with both teams where they are right now, it's hard for that game to matter more than any other game, which also don't matter very much at all right now. That doesn't mean it's not good basketball. I think there's exciting things happening with both teams. A bunch of really, really, really talented freshmen. Eric Williams from Duquesne, Marcus Carr, Shamil Stevenson, Parker Stewart from Pitt. I mean, those are players that are going to be, at the forefront of Pittsburgh's college basketball scene for quite some time. And I think you could certainly get used to seeing them around. Go see them play. I expect actually all those players that I mentioned should have pretty big games, especially Carr, Stevenson, and Ryan Luther. If you're a Pitt fan or if you're from the North Hills, Ryan Luther, a Hampton guy, coming in his last game, probably at PPG Paints Arena, his last city game. I'm sure he did not feel good about that loss last year, so maybe Ryan Luther will show out. He certainly is the most talented interior player in the game, so maybe he'll have a big one and send Pitt out a winner. Either way, I'm looking forward to it, but not for the usual reasons you would look forward to a rivalry game like that. I have run over my allotted time. Brian, thank you for not pulling me away with the vaudeville hook.
Should just be happy I didn't fall asleep because I'm so tired. People know I work overnight who listen to this network. That's my game, Alan. I just have to try to fight the Z's.
If I'm keeping you awake, I'm doing a good job.
You're doing a good job, yeah. If he can keep me awake, he can keep anyone awake.
That's right. That's it for us. RiversEdgePGH.com. I'm Alan Saunders, again in for Matt Geica. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week on Geics Got Game.